Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to continue on our discussion with short stories. Last time I kind of introduced the idea, mainly talked a little bit about like what a short story is, what genres they kind of work well with, not so well with in some cases, and I touched a little bit on like why you should be writing short stories. And so I kind of want to go deeper into that, just in case you're not sold on the idea of short stories yet, because I still think a lot of people and I come across this every once in a while in sort of the writing gurus on the line is that writing short stories is kind of a waste of time. You should be working on your next novel. You should be writing more novels. You should be working on your series and short stories. Unless you just want to knock one out as like a free giveaway to your readers or something, you shouldn't be wasting your time with short stories. I think actually that's very there's some legitimacy to that, but I think it's also just very sort of narrow and kind of short sighted. And I think there's two big broad reasons as to why you should be writing short stories. Uh, there are craft reasons, and then there's also business reasons, which a lot of people don't really talk about as much. Um, so on the craft side, I think I touched on this a little bit last time, is because short stories are short. I mean, we're usually talking about something from as little as 1,000 words and as up to maybe 12 or 15,000 words. So they're fairly short. They are not a huge time and energy commitment to you or your reader. And because of that, you can kind of do things that you can't really do in longer form fiction. You can experiment quite a bit. Experiment with writing styles. Like let's say you want to get into the purplest of purple prose. You just want to do it. You want to write it. You want to feel what it's like. You've never done it before, or that is like how you typically write. And you're always having to cut it out of your novels, and you don't want to do that anymore. You just want to have fun writing that sort of thing. You can do that in a short story. It in anything longer than a short story, that sort of writing would probably be pretty tedious. Tedious to the reader, might even be tedious to you as the writer. But, for a short story that's 3,000, 5,000 words, yeah, people will go along with that. Because remember, a short story is something people can usually sit and read in one sitting. And so they're a little more willing to tolerate certain things. So you can kind of experiment with that sort of thing. Whereas you could do some of this experimentation with just writing exercises. Like, oh, just get all your purple prose out. Just describe the room that you're in as much lavish detail as you want, and just get it out of your system. And that's also true. You can do that in that sense, but that's not really a story. That's describing a scene. That's describing a setting. There's no character. There's no plot. Nothing's happening because there's no characters to drive the plot. And so you just have this sort of setting sort of thing. Whereas if you just went ahead and made it a story, very simplistic story too. You could just make a very simplistic character with an opinion about the setting, which is going to drive that purple prose that you want to write, and then just give it the most basic of plots. Just see if you could make and here's a good assignment if you want one. Make making a peanut butter sandwich, interesting. Can you drag out 6,000 words of a character really doing nothing, but deciding to make the peanut butter sandwich, making it, and then going to sit down and eat it, and leave them with a cliffhanger on like, is it any good or something like that. You can do that with short stories. And the difference between that versus like just a writing exercise is once you're done with that short story, you now have something to sell. People, like magazines and stuff will not buy your, writing exercise experiment because there's no story there. They might still write your, buy your other stories, your peanut butter making, story, but probably, they might buy it. Readers also might buy it too, especially if you have a certain style like that. To me, that would be the thing. That'd be experiment. Is like really getting your author voice into this scene of just making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and some readers will buy into it. Again, it's a short story, so they might pay 99 cents or $1.99 to read your funky little peanut butter and jelly sandwich writing thing, and they won't feel gypped out because if you've put your voice into it, you've put some thought into it, and it's only like $1 or $2 or something. they'll feel fine. Whereas you can't really do that with just your describing a scene. People will tear you apart, especially if you try and sell it like a story and they realize, oh wait, she's just describing the kitchen and nothing's happening in the kitchen. No one's in the kitchen. I don't care about this. 1-star review, that sort of thing. So that's the other difference between just doing a short story versus like a writing exercise. You can also play with other writing skills like pacing. You can really decide I want to write like an action scene. In many ways, that's kind of like what I did with Battle at Blood Oak. It's basically just a battle. There's a little bit of a setup. There's a little bit of a denouement, but pretty much most of the middle, I would say probably about the middle 1,000 words, and it's only like a 1,500 word story. That's pretty much just describing the battle and what's going on there. And so you can do something like that where it's an action scene or a battle scene or something else like that, and just play with the pacing and see if you can, make it long where it needs to be long and slow where it needs to be slow and fast where it needs to be fast and that sort of stuff. Playing with dialogue, two people just talking, something else like that. So you can kind of do these kind of experimental sort of things on the craft side, and people will totally go along with it. Again, because if it's short, you're selling it as a short. You're still writing a good story. You're not just kind of you know wasting everybody's time. Then yeah, a lot of readers will go with it. You can also play with characters as well. Make the character something kind of strange, like an inanimate object. What does the what does the plate feel like? Being you know put out there to hold the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Is this a depressed plate? Is this a plate that's kind of forgotten? Is this a plate that gets used all the time and is just exhausted from being washed, or it feels love and anatomy? Silly stuff like that. It's a plate, but you can again make that the character and see where that goes and make that kind of interesting because again, readers will go along with it if you sell it as something kind of quirky and short and don't charge them an arm and a leg for it. Then yeah, they might go for it. Even with characters, you can make your characters unlikable. It's one of the things that's kind of the kind of canards of writing is people don't want to spend a lot of time with characters they don't like. That's why almost every story that you read out there, certainly every novel, I should say, the protagonist, the main character, is a hero. He might be an anti-hero. He might be kind of a dark hero, but he might do some pretty horrible things. But we feel like he is the good character, like Dexter. He is a serial killer, and he kills other serial killers. So we're willing to go along with this guy. Yeah, he's a serial killer. He's like every other serial killer out there. But his thing is he kills other serial killers. If he ran around and like kidnapped little kids and was torturing them and killing them, that show wouldn't last. That might be a horror movie, and even that probably wouldn't be made because most people don't want to sit through a 2 hour or a 90-minute movie watching this guy kidnap and torture and murder kids and things like that. We can show the villain doing that, but we need a hero that's trying to stop them. The most recent example I can think of is Doctor Sleep, where we go back and forth between the psychic vampires, I forget what they were called, as they were going around catching kids and torturing them and that sort of thing. We got to see that, but we saw that mainly to show the stakes. So our hero, played by Ewan McGregor, we know what he's up against and why he needs to go out and stop them. But in a short story, maybe you could just write the whole story from the serial killer's perspective. Some people would kind of go into that and want to read that, and that would be kind of interesting, to them. Then you have to figure out like how you're going to end it. Does he just get away all the time? Does he finally get caught or killed, or and that sort of thing? But again, readers will kind of tolerate your little experiments in a short story if you do a good job, if you write it well, and I think also mainly if you sell it the right way. If you let them know, one, you're getting a short story, and then two, this is a little hint of what the experiment is and that sort of thing. And that kind of gets in the marketing realm, which is a whole other thing, which I'll probably never make a video on because I'm always learning and I would feel totally inadequate in teaching that sort of stuff. So yeah, so from a craft perspective, you should be writing short stories because it lets you experiment with a writing style using the writing skills that are out there, and then also just kind of play with settings and characters, even throwing around like plots a little bit and that sort of thing. I think like a movie like Pulp Fiction, where it jumps around in the timeline, would be very confusing in a novel, but it might work in a short story. No, it might work in a novel too. Because now I'm thinking of Slaughterhouse-Five, where he jumps around like that. But so if you feel like you can write as well as Kurt Vonnegut, then go for it. So the other aspect of why you should be writing short stories is one is the business side. That's kind of the other half too, which a lot of people just kind of poo-poo. One, you can sell short stories, and I don't know if you can make a living. Dean Wesley Smith would say yes, you could totally make a living off of writing short stories. I think it would take a while, and you'd have to write a lot of short stories, and you'd have to be constantly sending them out. So yeah, I think it can be done. I think it's a much better way to think of it as more like a supplementation of your writing as opposed to the main thrust of your writing. Because a lot of people still want to buy novels. They still like sinking their teeth into a story and a character and a setting, and they want to be in that world more than just like an hour or two, which is what a short story would give them. But there's still a lot of room for short stories. There's lots and lots of magazines. There's lots and lots of anthologies out there. A lot of smaller publishers or just even individual authors like me have figured out that um, it is another revenue stream to produce your own magazines or your own anthologies and that sort of stuff. It costs a little more upfront because you have to pay the writers. You have to pay them something. You either have to pay them upfront a flat fee, which is usually the standard, or you give them some part of the royalties, which means you have to pay them out over the length of the issue. That's pretty rare because that's just sort of a real pain in the butt. But so a lot of people are starting their own little magazines. I see all sorts of little fantasy magazines popping up all over the time. Mainly that's why I see it may just be also because that's mainly what I'm looking for. But I know there's science fictions out there. There's mysteries, all that sort of stuff. People are constantly looking for content to fill their magazines or anthologies. We're kind of entered the new pulp era. It happened about 100 years ago and it started in the 1920s, I guess probably 1910s. And we're kind of back into it now where it's about writing a lot, writing fast, sending it out wide, getting them published as many places as you possibly can. And there's lots and lots of magazines and anthologies and groups like that. They're constantly looking for content. And so if you are writing a lot and you are sending your stuff out to them, you will eventually, get more money, and that will be kind of the sort of thing. And then we get kind of get into the business side of like who owns the rights and that sort of thing, and that's again another whole video. So that's the one side is you can write your short stories and you can try and sell them, or you can also publish them yourself. You can publish them on Amazon and as well as like Kobo and Barnes and Noble. I think Apple. I suppose Google Play. I just don't use it because I've heard a lot of bad things about it. So there's lots of places where you can also just sell your own short stories. You can sell them individually, or you can sell them in a collection, or you can do both. And that's what I'm doing right now. If you go to pretty much any online store, you'll find a bunch of my short stories. I sell them all for about $2.99. I think maybe Battle for Blood Oak is like $1.99 because it's pretty short. But I sell them all for about $2.99. I have to make my own covers because you can't afford to hire people if you're to make covers. So you'll have to kind of learn how to do that yourself. But that's really not that hard. And so yeah, a lot of the Yark the Scholar stories and plus some other stories, they're all out there. And then what I'm going to do is probably later this year, although we're already in October, is do a Kickstarter to put some of those short stories into a collection and then sell that as well. And so one, these are all just different revenue streams, but these are also different ways for people to find you. There's a marketing concept called discoverability, which is basically how easy is it for someone to just discover you, just stumble across your stuff. And there's all sorts of ways to kind of do that. Ads basically are a way to up your discoverability because there's no guarantee that someone is actually going to see your ad, but you're spending money, you're giving money to Amazon or Facebook or somebody else to promote your books. That way it's a little more likely that people will see the ad, click on it, go to the website and see the book, and then maybe buy it. Um, and ads is a whole other thing. Again, don't want to get into that. But if you want to do a fairly more organic discoverability, which is literally someone just, they're searching for fantasy short stories, blah, you know, and Amazon or Google or whatever it is will spit out a whole long list of fantasy short stories. If you have more stories, then people will are more likely to find it. Partly it's because that's the way the algorithms work. Amazon does not want to sell one thing. Amazon wants to sell three things. If you notice, they always do like, people usually bought these things together, and it will be the item that you're looking at plus two other things. They're kind of related to it, and they'll tell you like, click now and you get all three of these sort of things. And that's what Amazon wants to do. Well, if you only have one story, Amazon's not interested in promoting you. This is even true with novels. This is the reason why series works. Is that if you only have one thing, well, Amazon's thinking like, well, we can sell them this one thing, but this other author over here, they have like five things. We're gonna like promote this author. So when someone does a search for fantasy short stories, someone who has like 5 stories or 20 stories, Amazon's more likely to kind of promote that than anything else. It also tells your readers, your potential readers, that you're a serious writer. You didn't just write a short story and publish it and then just sort of like forgot about it. That sort of screams hobbyist. Someone who just kind of decided to write something, put it out there for fun, and that's it. Whereas if you've got like a few novels, you've got a dozen or more, preferably like 2 or 3 dozen short stories, and some of them are collected in collections and some are individuals. That tells the reader, oh, this guy is serious. This is somebody who actually reads their stuff. And if all you do is write novels, you can get to that point. Lots of people have gotten to that point of having a huge catalog of novels available, but most people can't get there, and they can't get there very quickly either. It's like with me. I basically get an hour a day to do my writing, a little bit more on the weekends, but that's about it. And so if all I was doing was writing novels, my Amazon page would hardly grow. It'll look basically the same it did 6 months ago. Whereas now, it's much more full. There's a lot more to it because I have all these short stories are out there as well. It's just more ways for people to find what you're writing and experience your style. They're a little more likely to drop like $2-3 on a short story just to see if they like your style, if they like this character. And if they do, then they might run with it. And so that's another reason why to be kind of writing a lot of short stories. But yeah, I think that's about it. Rambled on long enough. What about you? Do you write short stories? Why do you write short stories? Do you have a particular reason to kind of do it, or is it just purely for fun, which is actually probably the best reason to be writing short stories? Is because you like reading them and you like writing them and you're off to the races. But anyway, if you would just put a comment, let me know what you think about short stories and are you writing them. I think the next video will be a little more into like the how-to side of writing short stories, like how to get into it and how to start if you've never written one before. All about how to write novels, but you feel intimidated by short stories, then that's fine. That'll probably be next week's video. But anyway, I will talk to you later. Bye.